Robert Jorgensen is an information security professional with expertise in information security strategy and execution, and 18 years of experience in various information systems roles. He holds multiple security certifications, including CISP, CISA, and CEH, as well as networking and system certifications from Microsoft, Novell, and Cisco. I'm sorry, I'm breaking in the bio. That reminds me. Does everyone know about Utah Sec? Who doesn't know what Utah Sec is? Utah Sec is a organization of all different kinds of chapters and local groups. DC 801, OWASP, SAINT, the ISC Squared Utah chapter, Snort Users Group. We meet the first Thursday of every month in various locations. It's on the website. You can go sign up and get in the email list so you can find out when the meetings are. It's all free volunteer offered, various subjects from different interests. Naming those different groups, you can see where the interests are going to come from. There's quite often something to eat. There's a great way to meet people, to shake hands, network, and as we'll talk about later on today, really get the security awareness in Utah really happening. Let me resume. CISP, CSA, and CEH, as well as networking and system certification from Microsoft, Novell, and Cisco. A Utah native, Rob received his Master's of Science in Information Systems from the University of Utah. He knows the stuff. Robert, thank you.
That's what happens when your wife is a former marketing copywriter. She makes you write. Otherwise, my bio would be much shorter and less interesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about bugs, bounties, and disclosures. That's bouncing around a lot. You got most of that from here. The bottom one is probably the most interesting to people. That's my nick on IRC. I can't pronounce it. No one else can. I had to look it up on IRC to spell it. When I first got involved with DC 801, I didn't know who these goofballs were, as you can see by Jeremy and Danny when they present later. So when I went to the subreddit for DC 801, I started off thinking, I don't know if what these guys are going to be like. So I used the CAPTCHA for my handle. And then when I was on the IRC, I kept using it on the IRC channel, and so I've been kind of stuck with it. I can't spell it, even though it's only 6 letters. I always want to put the Z in the middle, but so you guys can just call me Rob. This is just my standard disclaimer that this doesn't represent my employers or anybody but me. And if I mention something that you go out and break something, it's not my fault. So even if it is, don't blame me. This is going to be more of a discussion. I don't know if you guys have been to a B-Sides before, but this is going to be more discussion and less lecture. So let's practice that. What is a vulnerability? Anyone?
It's a weakness.
Let's move on to the 11 o'clock topic. Anybody? A weakness?
It's an additional feature.
An additional feature?
Any port provision to Danny.
Any other definitions? Any examples?
Profit.
A what?
Profit.
Profit is a vulnerability? It's hard to profit from vulnerability. Exploits, on the other hand. So when I was looking for a good vulnerability graphic, I found this one. I don't know, it's kind of a sysadmin joke or something, I guess. I don't know why there's a balloon. So if you find a weakness, a vulnerability, what do you do about it? Anybody? Has anyone ever found a vulnerability in a software or a website or anything? A couple of people. What do you do?
Put it on Pastebin.
Put it on Pastebin. What else do you do?
Communicate to the vendor.
Okay.
Let it sit on it for 6 months.
Any other things?
Or use an intermediate party if you don't want to deal directly with the vendor. So going through either one of the CERT teams or some of the intermediate.
Great.
Lawyer up and do full disclosure.
Lawyer up and do full disclosure. Is that it? So those have found a vulnerability. How many have reported it in one way or another? And what did you probably found
I've used
several.
all forms above. I've tried every single method, and it always depends on the bugs and who's the vendor I have to deal with.
Anyone else?
I reported it through Pastebin.
And how's Pastebin's, mitigation strategy for that?
They were fine. It was, public and I posted through Tor, no problem.
Nice. Vulnerabilities through Tor comes up later, actually. So this is what happened with me is I found a Facebook privacy bug, and it was actually a logic flaw, and it was accidental. I just I was using Facebook. This is about a year ago, and I like everyone else. I don't like Facebook, but I use it. But I was kind of tired of everything with the whole Republican primary because I have a lot of friends in Utah County, and everyone was insane then, and had a new baby on the way, and a bunch of things. I was like, screw all you guys, and I shut it down because I'm like, whatever, I don't need Facebook. And unfortunately, that didn't last very long because for when I was going to BSides and DEF CON last year, I realized the only way I could get a hold of somebody I wanted to talk to was through Facebook. And so I reactivated my account, and I noticed something. I went in and got this other person's contact information, but my news feed, I don't know if it's called news feed at the time, timeline, whatever, was just full of posts from somebody who hadn't posted in a long, long time. It was a friend of mine, and my entire news feed had dozens and dozens of posts from this person. I had an example before I took it down because it's kind of boring. But basically, what I noticed is the person hadn't posted anything in over a year. But as soon as I started reusing Facebook, there were posts left and right, and these were just like completely inane posts. These weren't like deep, philosophical posts. These are like, my cat ate my kid's cereal and things like that. Just 7 or 8 of them a day. So I started thinking about that, and I was like, well, that's a little weird. What are the chances that that would happen? So I went back and took another look, and what I figured out was that when the person started posting a lot, happened to correspond with the day I deactivated my account. So what are the chances that somebody doesn't use Facebook for about 18 months is what I figured out was the gap, and then as soon as I deactivate my account, start posting all kinds of stuff. Likely, not likely.
There are no coincidences.
There are no coincidences, somebody said. So this is what I found. And I'm not going to get too deep into this because most people know how to use Facebook. But Facebook has these inline privacy settings. Is everyone familiar with these? Basically, you can say you want to share it with some people, you don't want to share it with some other people. And those stick with each post. And what I found was that that ACL for the privacy is generated when your page loads. So when you go to Facebook and you load up your page, you've got a little, status type how you're feeling thing. That's where it actually pulls your ACL settings, and then those are persistent. So as soon as you let's say you decide you don't want to share anything with Danny anymore, you set that, and the next post it will be like that. And then the ACL is actually applied to the post itself, it's not on your wall in general. So what I found out was that this person had blocked me, or not blocked me, but restricted me from viewing their posts, specifically by my name. So what happens is that if you, and what the actual root cause of this is, more or less, is that name is associated with your account being active on the ACL. So the ACE, the access control entry, is based on you being there. Now when you deactivate your account, people can't see you, and conveniently it pulls it out of the ACL. So when they load up the page the next time, your name is no longer in the restricted list. The interesting thing is, when I said this was persistent, is that once you're out of that list and it reloads, you stay out of that list, even if you reactivate your account. So basically, kind of the upshot of this is that if someone blocked you on their Facebook wall, block has a specific meaning. So if someone hid their post from you and you deactivated your account, waited for them to reload the page, and then they started posting again, you'd be able to view it. So,
Okay, gotta make sure you understand. So they say, don't show Robert.
yes.
You deactivate your page.
Mm-hmm.
They reload their page.
Yep.
you reactivate, you see their posts.
Yep. Well, you're no longer in the ACL for the privacy, so you see all subsequent posts.
Okay, so I don't want to show you anything, and then I post some stuff.
Right.
And then you deactivate your page.
Right. And then you post some more stuff, and I see the more stuff.
I reactivate, I reload my page, you reactivate, you see everything after that point.
Right. And even after I stay reactivated, I'm still not in that list unless you happen to notice and put me in there.
So when I go back and look at my ACL settings, do I see your name or is it gone?
It's gone.
So I can re-add your,
You could. How often do you check your ACL settings?
never.
Unless you're posting something you're hiding from your wife or whatever. Then don't use Facebook. So this was a neat quirk, but who cares? Does anyone see any reason to care about this?
What'd you do about it? Drama.
Drama? What was that? Somebody in the back?
What did you do about it?
What did I do about it? That's a good question. So I didn't actually do anything with it initially because I was like, well, that. And then I'm like, wow, so much for that friend. Yeah, whatever. It's a work person from another job. But I mentioned it to a friend who is not here. Hopefully, he's on the stream. And his response was, "Cool, you ODa'd Facebook. You should report it." And the two things I thought about was, certainly someone else has come up with this because I just stumbled on it. I'm not even looking for it. And the other thing is, does anyone really care? Does anyone think anyone cares about that?
Yes. Maybe
Yeah.
other people are modeling stuff off of Facebook. They run their ACLs and everything. So if they're modeling off of that, there could be vulnerability elsewhere.
So what I did was I decided to look around because certainly this had to exist somewhere. I didn't actually stumble on something. So I found this deactivated friend account. Does anyone remember this from March of last year? It had a quick blip in the news because it was like, oh my God, everyone can read your Facebook. These two guys from the University College of London went to an IEEE conference, and they found basically that you could friend somebody and deactivate your account, and when you're deactivated, the friend could not interact with your account at all. So they couldn't remove you from the friends list. So if I wanted to say, friend Justin and say, hey, we're friends, and then deactivate my account real quick, and you post a bunch of things, and I can reactivate, read all your posts, and then deactivate, and maybe you've forgotten I'm a friend, and I'm seeing things that you don't want to be seen. So this was a big loophole, and there was an MSNBC article on it, and Ted Garrell, and everyone covered this. And I thought, well, that's kind of similar, but not quite the same. But then there's a Facebook response that basically said, earlier this week, some researchers found this theoretical flaw, and we fixed it. But the more interesting part for me was this message, which basically says, we appreciate security researchers doing stuff, but we encourage people to use the white hat program. And it's, blah, 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 didn't use our responsible disclosure policy. So I was looking at this, I'm like, white hat program? All right, what's this? So this is Facebook's white hat program. So you were asking what I did? This is what I did. I found this. This basically says if you're a security researcher and want to do responsible disclosure, use this stuff. If you're not, go somewhere else. There's kind of an interesting thing on their policy here, which is, I don't know if you guys can read it from back there, but it's if you give us reasonable time to respond to your report before making any information public, and make a good faith effort to avoid privacy violations, destruction of data, and interruption or degradation of service during your research, we will not bring any lawsuit against you or ask law enforcement to investigate you. So that's pretty reassuring. This is actually why I, like in 80, I did my report through Tor. So you have a form here, you put in your vulnerability type, your scope, description, reproduction steps, and you submit it. That's a fake email address that I did from there. So this is the big point is the bug bounty. So basically they have a bug bounty that says, if you do the responsible disclosure policy, which is the one you saw before, which says that if you do all this stuff, we may not sue you or file criminal charges. And give reasonable time, be the first person to report it that could compromise the integrity of the Facebook user, has all the stuff, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, We will pay a minimum of $500, increase the reward for severe creative bugs, and basically you can't like just DOS them and say, hey, give me money. Does anyone find that interesting? Yes. Has anyone ever done a bug bounty before? So I submitted. I didn't really think anything of it. This is the first part of June last year. This is the actual bug bounty report that I sent in. Blah, blah, blah. Hide this from deactivated. If someone's really curious, I can post this somewhere. N80 can steal it and post it on Pastebin. So that brings us to the question is, back to disclosure, right? So what I did, they're calling it responsible disclosure. Now, some people mentioned they've done full disclosure. Does anyone want to talk about what full disclosure is? Does anyone not know what full disclosure is? Okay, so full disclosure, you basically tell everybody. Does anyone know why full disclosure is appealing to certain security people?
It's a mailing list that's good for trolling.
Mailing list good for trolling?
They're gonna fix it fast?
Might fix it fast. Any
Well, a lot of times what most security researchers are literally doing today is they're sitting on the bugs. Because if they do the full disclosure route, they can have lawsuits thrown against them, they can have bad news, bad media press thrown against them, might get some positive out of it, you know, bad press is still good press. But if you do the responsible disclosure route, you can set up the same thing. People can still try to sue you. Like for instance, if you remember back WEP got cracked, lots of problems with WEP. What was Cisco's solution to fix WEP? Anybody remember their first solution? Leap. Remember the leap protocol? Okay, so they were doing WEP, and we'll just change our keys really, really quickly. Okay, a good friend of mine, Joshua Wright, looked at their solution and figured out, hey, you know what? This is actually worse than what WEP was originally, and actually made a responsible disclosure straight to Cisco. They attempted to put a lien on his house.
So that falls under other. So we talk about other in a minute.
And that's the problem. If you ever work with anybody, back when I was working for JetBlue, we had somebody report some vulnerabilities in our site, and the first thing that our security team did is let's actually try to put some a legal hold on him or a court order that he can't discuss this with anybody. And I had to fight back the security teams like, what are you guys doing? This guy's trying to help us out, and you're trying to hinder or harm him. So that's the reason why we have the whole range of responsible disclosure, full disclosure,
and other
sitting on it.
Yeah. So with full disclosure, I just jumped into the slide. That's where you basically tell everyone. The pros are you get the information out there. The cons are a lot of things that just were brought up in the back. One of the kind of philosophical pros is that if there's a problem with a widely distributed software is that everyone should know about it so they can do something to mitigate it, right? It's like, if you've got a car and the airbags happen to explode and kill everyone, is it better to only tell Honda, or is it better to tell everybody so they quit driving their Hondas, or maybe turn off their airbags or something? That's a horrible example. I'm awful at analogies, if you can tell. So basically, the full disclosure is kind of I don't know, you get that kind of white hat sort of, I'm going to tell everyone, let everyone know, but there's certainly cons. Does anyone else think of any other pros or cons for that?
Sometimes it's the only way to get action. But I suggest to everyone before you do a full, if you do a responsible disclosure first, and you do the right thing and you're getting pissed off because you're not seeing any traction, contact our friends at the EFF. They're really good about this kind of stuff.
And one thing you'll see on a lot of, if any of you guys follow any of the disclosure lists or bug tracking, anything like that, you'll see these emails come out that'll be found vulnerability in X, reported to vendor, May 2012, reported again in September 2012, no response, reported again in December, and then February rolls around and they're like, okay, I'm reporting it to everybody. The vendor hasn't done anything in 7 months. So responsible.
Sorry, what is EFF really?
EFS is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's EFF.org. They do online privacy rights, online civil rights, that sort of thing. If you go to DEF CON or Black Hat or B-Sides in Vegas or anything like that, there'll be a nice young lady who would love to tell you all about it and take some money.
They are very responsive to their emails too.
And I think I actually had some slides about some stuff they did, and I think I took them out, so, oops. But responsible disclosure is giving the vendor an opportunity to fix a vulnerability before publishing. Why would you do that?
Well, that's how you should stay on good graces. You should say, I'm really trying to help you out before you're attacked by someone else who's less noble than I.
Well, and hopefully the vendor can create a patch before everybody finds out about it.
And that's one of the key ideas with this is that there's something wrong, you know about it, but maybe not everyone in the world knows about it. Or a small subset know about it and maybe exploiting it, but if you reveal it before a patch can get out, then everyone can exploit it. Does everyone understand the difference between a vulnerability and an exploit? Does anyone not?
I can just go over it just in case.
Just in case. Nemus doesn't know. Nemus has already seen this talk at least once, so.
This is the first time I'm paying attention now.
Oh, thanks. This is the new and updated one, by the way. So you have a vulnerability. There's something wrong, and I'll use another horrible analogy. That's like your house is built out of straw, right? The exploit is how you take advantage of that vulnerability. So that would be a huffing, your threat actor would be your big bad wolf. A great example of that is with MD5, there's a vulnerability with collisions on hashes, right? Everyone familiar with that? Is there any exploits for that? What's the exploit on that?
The simplicity in the way the MD5 algorithm is actually done, once you have a known collision, you can then actually add the same exact content to the two collision items, and your MD5 hashes will always be equivalent. So as long as you actually use two different collisions that are known as a common seed, then you can actually change the contents whatever you want.
And is there an exploit for that out in the wild?
Beast is, well, partially out. That's part of what Beast is based on. We're just doing a more optimized approach to taking advantage of that with HTTP.
The other one with that is the flame. Signed certificate collision, that was the same sort of thing, exactly the same idea behind that, with being able to add the information and throw that into that. So you have a vulnerability, which is that you can have hash collisions. Everyone knows what a hash collision is, right? Hash, supposedly unique string after running data through a function. A collision is when two different strings have the same hash. So that's the vulnerability, is that you can have the exploit is the way to basically use that, weaponize it, somehow accomplish something. So with the responsible disclosure, a lot of times they want to have you give the vendor time to do that before an exploit can be developed, or if you've already got an exploit, not tell everyone about it. Are there any cons to responsible disclosure?
They may not fix it, or they may be slow to fix it.
They may be slow to fix it. All right, now you'll notice the Facebook bug that they mentioned, the deactivated friend account attack, they fixed it in 48 hours. You notice we haven't got to mine being fixed yet. Yes?
A big disadvantage is if you're hacking for profit. Some people make a living doing this stuff.
And so that's, we get into that. One of the cons is that if there's a problem out there and you know about it, but you don't tell everyone about it, people are still using the software or the application or the website, assuming that it's all safe and happy. Is that good, bad, ethical? If you know that PayPal reveals everybody's bank account information if you put in a certain string in the URL, is it ethical for you to say, hey, I'm only going to tell PayPal right now, or should you let everyone know so that they don't have money in those accounts? Any thoughts? Too early for philosophical, ethical discussions.
Well, PayPal is evil, so it doesn't matter.
So let's say it's Bandcamp.
Oh,
What side do you use? You had something?
Well, I was just going to say there is kind of a misconception, at least with vendors in the responsible disclosure route,
and that if you don't tell anybody, nobody else is using it or knows about it.
Mhm.
And the problem is, like was mentioned before, you know, a lot of these vulnerabilities people are just sitting on, or they're, you know, using them to their own advantage and not telling anybody about it.
Or governments are using against their people, their
Or,
own
yeah.
citizens.
What? Governments?
Right, so I mean, all these different people, we're not always the smartest people in the room, right? There's always gonna be someone else that knows what's going on and has already weaponized it and is using it, so.
Right.
So
So,
just not telling someone doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's not being used against you.
by the way, the slide later says U.S. government allegedly, just to be clear. So, do you have
Just
something
one-
else?
Yeah, one more thing about responsible disclosure. Personally, having gone through this several times and having many friends gone through this, the route that I'm currently using now is if I go to whatever vendor that has a vulnerability, if they have a documented process to report these vulnerabilities and a way for me to immediately get in touch with the right teams, then I'll usually go directly through that vendor. If the company has no information and it's difficult to actually get to the right team, aka Sprint, it was a nightmare. I had to go through Verizon's security team to actually get to the Sprint security team after failing for 3 months trying to get in touch with them. If they don't, then go through some other third-party intermediate. And so I do a lot of work inside a control system, SCADA systems, and so I use ICS-CERT to do my disclosure because that's a lot easier. They have an established route and connectivity with these channels. And ICS-CERT will still maintain your name with the vulnerability, and they'll actually help negotiate the time periods as well for how long they sit on it. So.
Yes.
Another option we haven't discussed, work with a lot of vendors themselves, and when you have a 0 day, is to approach them for an assessment, right? And then, you know, you do the assessment, you give them, your report is pretty much written because you already have a 0 day, right? And you give them the 0 day and there's no issues.
And do they pay you for that?
Oh yeah, well,
Is that extortion?
Oh, they'll pay up front, right?
Right. But you're going in knowing what you found. You're going in knowing that you found the vulnerability? So how's that work in your little sales pitch?
How does it work in the sales speech?
Your sales pitch when you say, I'd like to do an assessment for you, and they're like, why? And you're like, I certainly don't have a vulnerability in my pocket.
The sales guys obviously can sell you pretty much anything, but this is just another option if you don't want to go through this process.
Well, I think it's also different, a company approaching the vendor versus an individual.
So this is going to get into extortion versus hush money. And those who've seen me do this before know that I kind of mentioned this before, but I think this is sort of the more interesting angle. So we have the angle you're describing where you know a vulnerability, or you have an exploit, or you've got whatever O day, and you're going to go to a company and say, I would like to share this with you. How much is it worth? What do you guys think about that?
You can make a lot of people angry.
Could make a lot of people angry. What's that?
It depends on their programs. I mean, some will probably respond to it. Some places might pay up.
So, yes.
And also understand that the bug bounties and things like this is cheap QA.
Yeah. Did you guys all download my slides from somewhere else? Yeah. So there's the extortion angle, and then there's also the hush money. Does anyone know what I mean by hush money? So imagine you find a vulnerability, and you're not going to go post it on, say, Pastebin, and the company's like, you know what? Instead of posting on Pastebin, we'll give you, a couple $100. Now, you may look at that and go, hey, I've done this work, I've earned a reward. But at the same time, you've got the organization basically paying you not to tell the world about it. So if I happen to have a secret of yours, and you're like, hey, let me give you some money so you don't tell anyone. What is that? I mean, yes.
So is hush money basically what you get when extortion is successful?
So, well,
the dollar amount first.
Yeah. So the way I kind of differentiated this, which is completely arbitrary, is that the extortion is when you say, "Hey, I've got something. What's it worth?" The hush money is like, "Hey, I've got something." I'm like, "Hey, why don't you just hold on to that for a little bit and give us a chance to fix it?" Yeah,
but the money spends the same as that.
The money spends the same. Yeah, the money is. That's a completely different topic. So we're kind of talking about a little ethics. We'll skip there. So the question is how will vendors encourage responsible disclosure? Because that seems to be what's in the vendor's best interest, right?
Let me jump in real fast. Got your extortion slides?
Yes.
If you are going to report a bug to any company, don't ever go in with any expectation of ever getting anything back out of that agreement and expect to put a lot of hours in for free, period. If you go in with any expectation of receiving funds back out of it, or if you even mention them providing something to you in exchange, that's actually the fastest way to get yourself in jail. So.
Because that definitely falls in the extortion.
That is extortion.
So, yeah, and so that's yeah, that's a great example. So the two ways that vendors encourage responsible disclosure, right? Vendors aren't big fans of full disclosure, right? It makes it look bad, but they do like responsible disclosure. One of the ways you do that is recognition of security researchers. Does anyone know what that is? Your name goes up on a thank you page. Does anyone have their name up on a thank you page anywhere? No? After all these things you reported? So apparently there are people who do it without engine recognition. The other thing is bug bounties. Why would anyone pay a bug bounty?
Cheap QA.
Cheap QA? As somebody mentioned, the money spends the same.
Well, it's like you're saying on Facebook, they say we'll pay 500, we'll pay more for creative, so if the really good hackers are out there, they're finding the problems that their own team isn't. Like you said earlier, it's cheap QA, but you can reward them and encourage better and better hacks.
That's correct. Any other reasons?
It adds goodwill to the community, all right? The security community, I think, appreciates bug bounty programs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you look at the companies that have them and the ones that don't. And I mean, who you want to work with, right?
It's also a good resume builder. You know, like, you guys have all seen the movie Hackers. They show up at Gordon Icon's place. This is crash override. Done anything? No. But if you're like, done anything, like, oh yeah, I've got like 8 bugs against Facebook and 12 bugs against Google and blah, blah, blah. Like, people are going to be like, oh yeah. Like,
one against the Gibson?
One against, yeah. 6 Gibsons in my belt. Yeah, like, you should, you know, like.
No one under 30 laughed at that.
I have a question on that now. A resume to who?
To a potential employer.
Yeah, because my question is, as an employer, you know, there's certain people we don't hire because of things that they've done in full disclosure, as an example. And we have clients that say, don't hire that guy, you know, just between us, don't ever hire that guy, or we won't work with you anymore. You know, it's a catch-22, really. I mean, it's, you know, you're trying to do the right thing by you know, providing bug reports, but at the same time, you know, sometimes I think maybe you put a noose around your neck as well.
I disagree, because I think that, like, A, good help is hard to find, and B, like, I kind of phrase job security in a different way than most people, I think. Like, a lot of people look at job security as, like, their ability to hold on to their current job, but for me, job security is my ability to get a different job if I want one. And so, like, if I can, you know, pop, like, a bunch of different bugs and have my resume stand out above somebody else, and I go to one company that I think is going to be cool, and they're like, no, we don't like you because you, like, publish exploits, there will be 50 other companies that want those skills from you.
In terms of resume building, though, it's probably better to go the bug bounty route.
Yeah, that's why I do bug bounties.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I mean, is how do you go about doing it? Because we see those, you know, full disclosures out there, and then we have somebody come along and, you know, and you know, the community's small, so it doesn't take very long for someone to say, you know, don't hire that. I mean, nobody, you know, none of our clients ever come out and go, hey, you know, here's a list of people don't hire, but they'll say, hey, you know, don't on that particular guy. But I think the bug bounty rule is.
Yeah, or really any of the responsible disclosure rights. Like even through Microsoft, who always gives credits to who's the one that actually found it.
Responsible is the key, I think, right there.
Yeah. Because I mean, as a business owner, you know, people that practice in full disclosure, well,
and they did something really cool. They implemented their program fairly recently, and they went back retroactively and paid people who disclosed to them before they put their program in place.
Wow, that is
so. Most of these, Mozilla, Google, you've heard of, CC Bill. Is anyone going to admit to being familiar with that?
How long does Samsung have one?
I'm not sure when they're started.
Right around the time they got sued by Apple. No, I don't know. We'll also take apple bugs.
Apple bugs you sell somewhere else. How much do the bug bounties pay? Mozilla pays $3,000 and a t-shirt. Google, for Chromium bugs, through their bug bounty program, is between $500 and $1,337. I'm glad some people are smiling. I did this presentation for a group of auditors, and no one had any idea why were like that. And they had no idea why there's no zero on that one either. So, as you can see, you can get some money. Facebook does 500 to 5,000. Most of them try to get lead or a lead in there somehow. But what if you want more money? So, because now when you get to these Podium 2, so the Podium is put on by Chromium, Google, etc. These are not just finding a vulnerability, you actually need an exploit to do this. This one was Hack in the Box 2012, which was in October, I believe, is in Malaysia. So this is what they paid out. So if you could actually do a account persistent using a bug in Chrome, $60,000. So persistence basically meaning that your whatever you did lasted through a reboot. So any permissions, escalations, things like that. Partial Chrome exploit. So if you use Chrome and say, I don't know, Flash or Java. Well, if you search for an image for vulnerability to put in your presentation, like a third of them are Java, the Java logo. There's some other ones. You get less money for less things. If you use Flash, you can for non-Chrome exploit. But Google will pay you money to go to these conferences and do that. Pwn to Own, have you guys heard of that one? That's how the CanSec West. This is what they paid for one that did Google Chrome on Windows 7, $100,000. IE10, IE9, Firefox, web browsers. Now, the probably interesting one is how little they pay for a Java exploit. So there's something to be said about how difficult these are and how widespread. So this was recent. This was in March when they did that. They paid out $480,000 of the $580,000 they had allotted for us. ViewPen, which is a French vulnerability company of sorts, alone took $250,000 for their exploits on IE10, Firefox, Flash, and Java. So there should be a comment there because Flash Java is not a thing, right? Podium 3, however, was held at the same time at CanSec West, which is held in Vancouver. They had $3.14159 million available. There was no winner. So this was specifically to exploit Chrome and the Chrome OS on their Chromebooks. And there was no winner. They had $3 million. No Pinkie Pie, has anyone heard of Pinkie Pie?
I haven't.
A couple of people. Pinkie Pie is some kid somewhere. Does anyone know anything about him other than he just takes money? Can you provide any insight? No? Okay. Because he's pretty hard to track down anything about, right?
He is balling out of control then.
Yeah.
And
So
you're probably gonna say it.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say about his exploit. It didn't even come in during the time frame. But Google is awesome, and they just gave him money anyways.
Yeah, so with this one, that's what his partial exploit was. Basically, he was working on something, and at the deadline, he did something rather than keep it in his own pocket for next year. He said, "Hey, this is what I've got," and Google's like, "You know what? Here's a partial prize." So not bad. He also took $60,000 at Podium 2, I believe, and the year before. So he basically is making money just going to these.
Yeah, if you come talk to me during the party, I might have some additional stories that I can.
Yeah. So he's pretty hard to find any information on.
A lot of vodka Red Bull.
Yeah, we can't get any of those in Utah. They didn't tell you that, did they?
No.
No vodka, no Red Bull.
5 wives.
We can't get you those. So who else pays for vulnerabilities and exploits? We talked about the companies, all that. There's other people. There's exploit brokers. Does anyone know what exploit brokers do? They broker exploits. Millmen, right? They're taking that. They're selling to these other people. There's ViewPen. I mentioned them earlier. Anyone have any opinions on them?
They just sell the government,
Exploiting shit.
Yeah. They're French. Some people don't like them. Some people do. They seem to do some pretty cool stuff. U.S. government contractors, allegedly. Various governments, allegedly. China doesn't do anything. There's the 0-day initiative. Is anyone familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that?
Nothing.
Nothing.
CDI is like the program from Tipping Point, which is owned by HP now, I think.
Right. So they have basically a program where they're paying for bugs for other companies. And some number, I read something and it was a little dated, but it was like 7.5% of like Windows bugs go through them and get paid out. And then, so basically they're arranging the deals. They're doing exactly what Justin was talking about with the working with the vendors, setting a disclosure date, giving the people credit, they're paying some money. Packet Storm has another similar thing they just started. Exploit Hub. Is anyone familiar with Exploit Hub?
Yeah, that's Drew's program, isn't it?
So, not sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm showing that. So Exploit Hub basically is essentially a marketplace to buy things. I've got a screenshot of here. You have a question?
I was just going to bring up the VeriSign item.
Yeah, that one is there too. Have they done anything this year? So I looked at their website last night because I was going to include them on this. But the last thing they had listed was 2012, and I wasn't sure if they shut it down. And to get more information, I had to log in, and that was a lot of work. So
I can say that yes, I'm looking at stuff on their feed.
Okay.
As recent as like 5 days ago.
Okay, great. So that was. So I knew they still had things. I just looked at their webpage. They just didn't have a lot of information. It's the same kind of thing as 0-day initiative. That's done by VeriSign. That's the VPS. Is it V? What's the acronym they use with that? I can't remember. If you look at VeriSign, you can find it's under one of their services. Packet Storm is doing kind of the third-party reporting thing. So for vendors who don't pay things out, they're kind of mitigating it. They're paying out things as well as working with the vendors to do disclosure. Here's their current price list. As you can see, it's not as awesome as some other things, but here's their bounty. If you find an Adobe Reader execution, $7,000. It goes all the way down to, if you happen to get a .NET Framework remote code execution, $350. So if you guys want to go out and find a bug, you can look at that. This is a list from an article in a Forbes article, or a list from a Forbes article about how much ODAs are going for. This list is, I don't know, does anyone buy these numbers?
Do we believe in them?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Is that supposed to be black market?
So this is supposed to be black market, gray market. These are your exploit brokers like the Grug, those kind of people. Anyone think those are high, low, realistic?
Java's a little high because Java on Mozilla is click to play now, and once they did that, the price for Java kind of dropped.
So,
but I mean, you go on some of the Russian hacker forums and things like that, I mean, you can get a pretty penny for Adobe.
So I don't actually know. I don't have anything cool enough to try to sell to these guys or anything. So some people like Bruce Schneier thinks that these prices are inflated because they're so ephemeral in their nature, because once it's patched, the vulnerability, the value goes substantially down.
Well, once it's used, it probably goes down, right? If it's
Right.
learned one time, then.
But then you look at how much you can make running a botnet. So if you can, buy an exploit for Flash for $30,000 and, get a botnet, how much can you make with a botnet?
A lot, over 9,000.
Yeah, so I mean, really, you can make your money back, right?
But the thing is, you can get into everything without ODay. So if you really need ODay, nah. So if you don't really need ODay to get into stuff, then
That's why I'm not sure about these numbers, but I threw them up because people are like, whoa, you know, this is what the mainstream media, you know, throws
Make it
out.
rain.
Yeah.
Happy and Jones.
This is Exploit Hub. These are specific exploits that people are looking for. They want this one, how many requests for it, the author's developing, and the bounties they're willing to pay. So you can basically bid for exploits. I can tell you that since I did this screenshot, one of those is no longer there. So, I believe it was the top one. So, that's just another place they sell them. There's this, which is, this list right here, you can find on bugcrowd.com. This is a list of the currently active bug bounty programs. They do their own, Facebook, Etsy. Here you can see, these are the vendors that actually offer rewards. And you can see all the information. Here is security brokers. Here's iDefense, as you mentioned. So there's ZDI, Packet Storm, iDefense, Beyond Security, Securia, Exploit Hub, etc. And then there's just ones where you basically get you get stuff rather than money. Dropbox, Amazon gives you a T-shirt. Depending on how good of an exploit, you may want to go up higher if you find an Amazon one. Products and services, this is just where you get mentioned. Right, Microsoft, as was mentioned, Microsoft does reveal your name and gives you nothing, maybe. Again, this is on bugcrowd.com. Here's ones that will give you stuff as well. Reddit, Salesforce, Oracle. So if you guys are interested in more information, that's a good place to go. Fantastic, right back to the first of the presentation. So are bug bounties worth it? Is this a good program? We got a couple people nodding.
Yes.
They're probably worth it for the vendors, right? You're getting cheap labor, as everyone mentioned. You don't necessarily get paid for doing the work, right?
And you get paid for success.
Maybe that's the one thing. Is these are subject to the company's interpretation as well. So, for example, in November, I thought I found another Facebook bug just screwing around, and I found that if you created a new account and you well, basically, so on Facebook, you know, you can go in and set it so people can't see your friends list, right? You can hide your friends list, so ostensibly no one knows who you're friends with and can't, you know, social engineer you or, you know, hit up your friends for money or whatever. So I found that if you were to create a new account and send a friend request to somebody and then go to the people you may know page, that was now populated with people you may know. Does anyone know where that people you may know came from? The new account doesn't know anybody.
Came from the person you sent the friends request.
Came from the person you send the friends request to. So despite the fact they may have that blocked on their privacy settings, when I tried it, I was able to pull down 168 of 215 friends my victim had. Does anyone see how that could be maybe useful?
You had all of those, send it to everybody, and then try and add your victim, right?
Right.
People on Facebook are gonna just add you for whatever reason. Not everybody, but someone will.
You know, if you're doing a social engineering assessment, maybe, you know, see who their friends are, send them an email. Maybe if you're doing something more nefarious in a social engineering assessment. Yes?
Did that happen before your victim friended you?
This
or right when you sent the request?
All you have to do is send the request. They don't even have to accept it.
Okay.
They don't have to accept it. You just send the request. So I reported this to Facebook, and their response was, "This isn't a bug. No money for you." And their explanation was this was not a definitive list of the friends, so the people may be on the friends list, or they may have some other association with the person.
Do you get with multiple counts? Is it a different list every time?
So when I tried it, it seemed to, against the same person, it seemed to be pretty much the same list. Whether that comes out of groups and other things, I don't know. After they said that we're not giving any money, I was like, okay, well, never mind then. So that, again, that's good for the vendors because they can choose what they pay out, right? And who knows, maybe they've adjusted that behavior. Is it good for security researchers? Yes, people are nodding, right? You can get something at something.
And one of the best things real fast, just for not just security researchers receiving money for this, but for every single person in this room, the best part about it is it gives us permission to actually start practicing our skills and gaining experience on real applications that are in production.
Yes, and an interesting thing along with that is a few companies, specifically Facebook, has actually opened up their infrastructure for this. So they'll let you find vulnerabilities against their infrastructure. Or most companies are like, oh, it's only against our web service or our application or whatever. They'll actually let you go against their internal stuff. So are bug bounties ethical now? We've talked about that now. Any other thoughts? You guys like them?
Yeah.
No hush money concerns?
They're paying up, things get fixed, I mean.
Companies are explicitly giving us permission to go look at their software.
I mean, that is pretty cool. So then let's look at who doesn't pay bug bounties. Any surprising lists on that? Does anyone work for any of those companies here? That's a loaded question. I know the answer to that one. So they do some other things. Microsoft, in addition to doing just recognition, because they'll do recognition, you can also, if you find a Microsoft bug, you can go through one of these other iDefense or ZDI or whatever and submit it through there. But they have what they call their Blue Hat program. Has anyone heard of the Blue Hat program?
The Blue Hat's different, like.
It is.
Yeah, it's not as, I mean, it's a more fundamental approach. Like with exploit, like bug bounty programs, you're doing like whack-a-mole, right?
Right.
You're just taking down like one issue at a time. But like Blue Hat was like, let's fundamentally change like and mitigate current exploit techniques so that like we don't have to deal with these problems anymore.
Right. So if you notice, if you look at this, like the wins a $2,000 or $200,000 reward for basically blocking a return-oriented program attacks. So the idea with their Blue Hat program is not that you're finding a specific vulnerability or exploit and getting paid for it. You're covering an entire class of potential vulnerabilities and exploits. They do that. So if you're more of a, not kind of the whack-a-mole as Andy mentioned, but sort of a, more of a application sort of guy, this may be something to look into, especially if you're doing that. Do you guys do any of that down at any of the companies around here that do security vulnerabilities? Anybody? No one wants to say anything? Reverse engineering people? Oh, someone's bumbling, I'm not going to call and reveal what he does. There's some things to consider. Does anyone know what that is?
Computer fraud and abuse act?
Yes, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. You have a song about that?
No, but Adam Morak has an awesome song called Fuck SOPA.
So this is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So one of the things that you have to be careful on is, even though these companies are saying go ahead and do this, that scope is a little bit, nebulous. You're not doing a statement of work. You don't really have a properly scoped document. So somebody could run afoul of this. I don't know of any case law or anything on this, but when you're looking at some of the stuff that people like us do anyway, this is just good to be aware of. Has anyone had any problems with that, specifically with bug bounties or anything? That's one concern I have, is that these companies are saying, hey, go check our stuff out, and then somebody's going to check it out a little bit too well, and be on the wrong end of that. For example, we have this gentleman. Does anyone know who this guy is?
Yeah.
This guy is Andrew Arnheimer. Does anyone know what he's better known as? Weave. Does anyone know what Weave did?
He incremented a number.
Incremented a number. So this was in 2010, 2011?
He tried to sell information from incrementing numbers.
Yeah, well, that's where things, this is the other disclosure, when I was talking about other. So what he did, so this was the iPad attack, where basically he incremented numbers and was able to pull like 100,000 email addresses from AT&T iPad users. And what did he do with them? He disclosed to AT&T?
You give them to the press.
He gave them to the press. He tried to get them submitted through the press. How did that work out for him?
Good job.
So sentenced to 41 months in prison and $70,000 for basically incrementing a number and then reporting to the press. So you're talking about the perils of full disclosure. It gets even worse when you try to sell that information.
But not just the perils of full disclosure. The example I gave about Josh Wright, that was responsible disclosure.
That was responsible too.
Before he even mentioned that, before he even thought about writing a tool like Asleep and releasing it to the public under open source, or even talking about it at a conference. This was just, hey, this is some help back to Cisco to try to help you guys out. And they threatened to put a lien on this house and try to pay for damages.
So this is an article in Wired where basically we wrote this a couple of months ago, basically talking about sort of the things we're talking about, selling it to third parties, notifying vendors, vendor patches, things like that. If you're interested in this stuff, you might find it kind of interesting. He talks about some of the anti-sec stuff where it's like you should only disclose an exploit to someone who's going to use it for social justice. So that's kind of an interesting article. We don't have time to get into it. It's kind of outside the scope, but if you guys want to check that out, it's just called Forget Disclosure, Hackers Should Keep Security Holes to Themselves. The other reason people want to keep them to themselves, obviously you can take it to Podium and get a bunch of money. And almost done here. One day I'll remember not to start the slide over when I do that. Somehow I added transitions on this. Another reason people disclose, hacker cred, right? You talk about building your resume. There's that one. Here's an example. Here's the Security Hall of Fame for Chromium. You'll see Sergey Glazunov in there quite a bit. You'll see Pinkie Pie up there. So people like that. If you see this one, this is Facebook's. This is my name down here. Yay. So what happened with my Facebook thing? Well, I got a sticker for it. I also got this email. This happened, so I was actually sitting in line at BSides, Vegas, waiting to pick up my DEF CON badge when this email came in, saying they're expecting a fix for this on Tuesday. So after sending that in and getting an email and saying, hey, we're looking into this, not hearing anything for about a month and a half, we get that. Then I get another email that says, we've looked into this issue and believe the vulnerability has been patched. Please follow up if you believe the patch does not resolve the issue. But this is the cool one. After reviewing the information, here's $1,000. And they send you a cool little white hat bug bounty program debit card. However, there is a downside to that. and the worst part. So keep that in mind if you get one of those. By the way, it's a 1099 miss. If you file it ahead of time, you're fine. Fortunately, my wife is very, very risk averse and was like, we should really report that. I'm like, yeah, there's no 1099. We'll report it next year. And then this shows up. So anyway, so if you do something like that, be aware that that money is 1099 and taxable. They do send you all your information in, your I-9 and all that good stuff. As I mentioned, I submitted it through Tor because I was a little concerned about we may not prosecute you. But it ends up now that you can buy my information for $1,000. So, and I'll send you all my tax information so you can do this for me.
Yeah, so to get paid, you had to give them a lot more information than after it's extended all that to you, right?
Oh yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, we're giving you money. Can you send us an I-9? Oh yeah. So my information is only worth $1,000 if anyone wants it. Does anyone have any other questions? I think I'm about out of time.
Right there.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.